Right, good afternoon everybody and welcome to today's innovation talk brought to you by ADF and PCD and PLD Paris and by Packaging Innovations and Luxury Packaging London. This is the 6th in our series and I'm delighted to welcome you all wherever you are in the world to join us this afternoon. My name is Josh Brooks. I'm the event director of ADF and PCD and PLD in Paris. So just like our face-to-face events, these online innovation talks aim to bring you inspiration and new understanding of packaging's key challenges and opportunities to help all of you, whether you're packaging developers, designers or suppliers, to connect with each other and to create better and more innovative packaging in your future projects. As we know, and as we've talked about in other innovation talks, the drive for sustainability in packaging developments is continuing to accelerate. But sometimes, as we all know, those innovations require new behaviours from consumers and sometimes even the acceptance of some level of inconvenience, which may potentially be a higher product cost or some other thing that we require the consumer to do in order to make that sustainability innovation work. In today's webinar, Nick Dormon of the London-based brand design agency Echo is going to be talking about those challenges and particularly in the context of how we communicate those issues and how we create and foster acceptance from the consumers to ensure that they are successful and that they are accepted by the market. And I'm very much looking forward to hearing Nick on this subject. So Nick, a very warm welcome. We'll be doing a Q&A after today's talk, as usual, and I would encourage you, as many of you are already doing, to get involved in the chat on the right-hand side of the screen. You may have heard a couple of pings on my computer just now. That's because I had not clicked on the bell button on the top of the screen. So if those pings are getting on your nerves, please click on the bell button to turn those sounds off. I'm just left with the very great pleasure now of handing over to Nick. Nick Dormon, over to you, and thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Josh, and good afternoon to everyone, wherever you may be. Talking to you from my home office today. I'm looking forward to telling you all about our thinking around consumers and sustainability. So I think I take control here. So yes, I'm a founder of Echo. We're a design and innovation agency based in central London, as Josh said. And today we're going to talk about consumers and how we can get them to buy into sustainable packaging. I think one of the issues here is that companies all want to do the right thing. They all want to change the sustainable practices, and often that means their packaging. But we've got to get consumers to buy into that process. I mean, you take the simple thing about recycling. You know, if we're developing packaging which is recyclable and consumers don't recycle it, you've got a broken system. It's not circular. So the consumer is absolutely critical part of this. But actually the consumer's often going, it's not my problem. It's the company's problem. It's the brand's problem. It's the government's problem. It's just not my problem. So somehow we've got to change that behavior and get people involved and feel part of all this. So I'm going to talk to you about that today. So where are we talking to you from? Well, we're talking to you from a company we've been going for about 15 years. And we work across pretty much every different consumer category there is, from water to beer to deodorants to tea, and also in telecommunications as well, and various other non-consumer goods places. And I think we've really probably been working in sustainability in that aspect since the get-go, or albeit sort of under the radar, and it was all about lightweighting about 9-10 years ago, and that's been accelerating for us over the last sort of decade. And we got to a point, I think really 2 years ago, where we said, hang on a minute, there's something we need to address. I think as designers, we actually created the consumer throwaway society in the first place. we made it appealing, we made it exciting. We created the aesthetics and the convenience and the usability of those throwaway things. The white t-shirt instead of the starched collar, you know, the car that you replace every 5 years because it's more beautiful than the last one. That was all down to designers. And so we actually have a responsibility, I believe, as designers to turn that around, and also the capability. If we made it happen in the first place, then we can turn it around and make for a better place. And at Echo, we feel that very, very strongly. So we've been doing a great deal of work, working in brands, helping brands build business, build successful businesses out there, but also to build responsible, ethical, sustainable businesses as well. And I'm going to talk a little bit about some of our learnings over the last few years on that. So the nub of the problem here, or the challenge, if you like, is that our clients have wonderful products, pure products, good products, very well-made products. I think if you take a really good example here of water, one of our clients is Evian. It's pure, it comes from those mountains, and they want to keep it that way. And that means putting it in a plastic bottle at the moment, or a glass bottle, which is actually even worse. And that causes a problem. Everyone hates the fact that Danone and other companies like it are putting their products in bottles and they're ending up in landfill or in the oceans, etc. But in order to keep that product perfect, we need packaging. So we need a solution that's going to keep the product well. It's going to look after the brand, because the brand still wants to exist in a few years' time. So if everybody starts drinking tap water, where's everyone going to go? And we need to find a solution that joins the two things together, a different sort of behavior in here. And actually, if we're talking about water, there are places where people don't have tap water, and they absolutely rely on the hygiene of plastic packaging in order to get their hydration up to the right levels, as it were. And pressure is coming from all quarters. We've got the consumers' consciousness is now, I think it's just gone over that tipping point where now more consumers than ever before, you know, it's gone over the 50%, will actually make a choice on their brand on its sustainability credentials. That's a big change, and it's accelerating. Supermarkets, supplied, you know, the retailers out there, the pubs, all sorts of different people are now demanding that brands do something about their packaging, do something about their products to make them more sustainable, because they want to be in that position as well. And it's a partnership. Supply chains is very interesting because supply chains have to change to be more sustainable, but also they're getting turned inside out. People can see what's happening in supply chains. So from an ethical point of view, we have to look after the people that are providing our products as well. And for us, sustainability is as much around the people that do the product and the land that it comes from as it is the packaging itself. And also there's stakeholder pressure from all sorts of different quarters now, from influencers, from government bodies, from you know, the non-government bodies out there. The pressure is absolutely enormous from every quarter. So there's lots of corporate dictates coming down and saying, right, okay, we've got to do X, Y, and Z. We're going to reduce this amount of you know, we want single-use plastic, and we're going to add in, you know, cardboard here, and all sorts of different directives. But it's down to the brand teams and the technical teams to deliver on that, and that's what we're there to help with. And there's all sorts of different materials being developed at a very, very fast rate out there, and some really exciting things happening. A lot of them, though, are actually invisible, so you can't even see them, and I'll come on to that. But there's some really odd things, you know, and we'll talk about it later, that you can actually make plastic from lobster shells. And who'd have thought it? And there's some real technical challenges in there. We've seen Carlsberg talking about their pulp bottle for some time. But, you know, how do you get around the technical issues of barrier properties, etc.? All sorts of technical challenges out there. But I'm not really going to talk about that today. I'm going to talk about the consumer in this. Now, the consumer is basically saying there, I would like to switch, as I said before, over 61% now, to a more environmentally friendly brand than their current one. So there is an intention to do better out there. The issue is then, is how do you connect to that? How do they find the brands who are doing the right thing, and so that they can engage and know how to engage? And the problem is a lot of these changes are invisible. That's why we're staying on the story of water. If you take Highland Spring, who are one of the earliest people in the UK to move to a recycled plastic bottle, nobody knew. It just, that little label on there, which you'd think would be enough, was nowhere near enough. The consumer just didn't see it. They didn't notice it. They noticed their brand, but they didn't notice what the brand was doing. So the straightforward normal communications that you do in this space is really struggling. So the big poster that says, yes, it's recyclable, the little flash on the bottle is not enough to tell the consumer that there has been a change. They can't see a change. That bottle looks almost identical to the last one, maybe slightly grayer, but not something that they particularly notice. And so one of the first things is we've got to bring it to the consumer's attention. Now, coming back to, you know, to how we can do that is everyone's trying to do it all at once. And everyone's using the same iconography, everyone's using the same green colors, everyone's using these circular arrows. And so it's just so much noise out there that the consumer's completely bamboozled. And some of those things out there, the three arrows going around isn't even to do with sustainability, really. It's a sort of sideshow. And so we've got a problem there. And one of our issues is we really got to stand out. To address that, we did a bit of a speculative project just to show what we mean by that. So these are some bags that are made from lobster shells. So we thought, well, if you're going to promote it, why don't you design the bag to look like lobster shells? Make a big fuss of it and turn it into something which is glorious and exciting and new and different. That's what design can do. Design can change the way people perceive things. This may be extreme, but I think it makes the point. The other issue is sustainability is expensive. So what happens here? Is the brand going to then add on the cost to their packaging, or are they going to absorb it? If they absorb it, is that going to take their profit away? If you're taking like the water industry, as we were just discussing, their profit margins aren't enough to be able to absorb all that cost. So are they going to pass it on to the consumer? Well, there's a problem there, because 48% of people know they should make more environmentally responsible purchases, but convenience and price take priority. You know, life takes priority. People don't have the money to spend more on products, and they have busy lives. Convenience has got to take priority. So we've got to work within those quite sort of normal but difficult parameters. So what we've done at Echo is thought round this. We can't do this directly. We've got to do this sort of indirectly. And what we call this is the nudge design method. And what's fundamental to it is not to appeal to people's better nature, as you've seen with like Highland Spring, is that if you just say directly, this is better, we're finding you're just not getting the uptake. But if we appeal to people's human nature, we appeal to those things which are far more automatic, and we might be able to actually break through. Can we find new benefits? Can we find new conveniences? Can we find more joy in there that will end up with a better sustainable behavior, but not necessarily directly? And this is important, because if you look at the adoption kind of curve out there, the early adopters, the evangelists of sustainability, well, yes, they'll go out of their way to read the back of packs and figure out which products to buy and which not to. But the vast majority, which are the people that you need to engage, haven't got the time, haven't got the money to do it. So we've got to appeal to that early and late majority. And the way to do that is to appeal to what are called human biases. So cognitive psychologists and behavioral economists out there have looked very hard at how people behave. What are those automatic, wired-in kind of processes that our brain has that allow us to work in society, to work on our planet? And what we can do is we can tap into those biases. And you can't read all these, there's so many of them on there, but I'm going to show you some examples in a minute. But this is our palette as designers. Now, we've got this roadmap here that we can use. We can now dip into this and think about, as design, how can the design actually connect into those human biases and make a difference? So what we're doing here is combining those two things. We're combining nudge theory with design thinking, and we're creating a solution through that. To simplify that down quite simply, there's already been some work out there to make sense of that huge kind of spider diagram. And these are pretty straightforward in a way, but actually you don't normally apply all of these things to when you're designing a product. You're often designing directly to a user need that's been identified and finding a solution to it. Well, now actually, if we're now looking at changing someone's behavior, we're not looking necessarily at what they need, we're looking at what they ought to be doing, which is a different way of thinking as a designer. So we're looking at ways we can make things easier. The path of least resistance, reducing complexity, making things simple and straightforward and effortless. We can look at how to make things more attractive, more appealing, more compelling, things that are, have that habitual thing in there. You can't wait to do it again. The social thing is really very, very interesting as well. We're not just designing for an individual, we're designing for an individual within a society. So how do we bring that society together? Because if you can create societal moves, you can achieve really, really amazing things. I'm reminded of, I think it's in the Czech Republic, where there was a societal change in wearing masks much, much earlier on in the COVID than any other country. And it went viral, it went digital, and they've actually had a much lower infection rate because society, not government, made that change very quickly. And timely, it's doing it at the right time, in the right place, where you've got that person's attention, or there's a tension point. Coming back to the whole COVID thing, the whole world is being upset, upside down. This is actually a moment of opportunity to try and do something new. So let me give you an example of what I mean. I'm going to take you into Schiphol's toilets to do that, which may seem a strange place to start, but I think it's one of the most brilliant and interesting examples I've seen out there of this. They had a problem in the men's urinals of people peeing on the floor, not paying attention. So it makes a mess. It's not hygienic. It's horrible for everybody else that comes in. They thought, how can we solve it? Of course, what they of course did, first of all, put some big signs up there and told people not to do it. Didn't make the slightest bit of difference. Everyone continued to pee all over the floor. What a designer did is they came in and they went, okay, I'm going to put a little fly etched into the urinal. And by doing that, they reduced spillage by 80%. Why? Because men like a target. They like, this is gamification. This is something to actually pee on. And you're just appealing to a different part of the brain, and everybody off they went and started peeing all over that fly, and it made the whole place more hygienic. That's what we're talking about. It's appealing to a different human bias in there than the one you might think. Let's come down to packaging. So 2.5 billion coffee cups binned each year. Big problem. We've got to do something about it. How are we going to do that? Well, we need to change consumers' behavior. The coffee cup was a brilliant piece of design. We went away from things that have to be washed up, that are heavy, that broke, to something that was lightweight. We could carry it around, it wouldn't spill. It became, a piece of social hardware, if you like. So designers created this problem. So how do we uncreate it? Well, there's three different ways that we've seen out there we can talk to you about. So the first here is this idea of creating new habits. So yes, you can have a durable cup, but what we need to do is create a system which is easy to recycle those cups around, and so they can get clean, you can pick up your new ones. And that's exactly what Cup Club have done. They've created a new habit by making it easy, making it systemized, and making it something that you can just do in your everyday process. You've got Cornware here, who have actually introduced a new material in there, which is far more sustainable. But to get people to notice it, they've created a whole visual world around it, created these wonderful colors that actually they're really appealing, and people just go, I want that, it's beautiful, I'm going to have that, and I'm going to choose it, not because it's made of corn, but because it's a beautiful thing. And then on the social thing, which I mentioned before, Keep Cup have created a social movement. People see you walking down the street with your Keep Cup. You're wearing your sustainability credentials on your sleeve or in your hand, if you like, as you're going down the street. And that's made this really successful by creating this very, very strong identity and mark that's gone with it. So what we're doing here is two things. We are responding to those things which are already there. The consumer is already wanting to change, and we're making it easy for them to just flip over. But we're also driving consumers into new behaviors and actually getting them to think differently about what they're doing. So what I've got here is sort of 8 top tips for you to take away in this world. So the first one is the power of value perception. So this is around essentially around concentrate. So if you look at that little fella on the left-hand side, it's something we work on the whole Rexona Shaw brand around the world. And one of the jobs we got to work on was this really exciting initiative from Unilever, which was to use to compress the active product in their aerosol cans down to a much smaller size. It's less packaging, less waste. Everything's good about this, but we need to get consumers to buy into it. Problem is when you put that on shelf next to a normal pack, and it's a similar price, the consumers automatically, the automatic bias in there, the value perception is coming and going, that's not worth as much. And so they had a real struggle there to actually communicate that. And one of the things that they tried to do was to actually say there's the same amount of product in both, and if you use it at the same time, it will last the same amount of time. That's a really difficult story to tell. However, if you would put in, let's say, 20% more product in there, you could have gone, it's a smaller size, but 20% more product. Problem solved. That value perception thing would have been a much simpler equation. Very often when we're trying to do these things, we have to do them in small steps. But what we do know is the consumer's going, why isn't it 100%? So if you're moving to rPET, everyone goes, well, we've got 30%, 40%, 50%, whatever it is, rPET plastic in our system. And the consumer's going, why isn't it 100%? They don't understand the technical side of it. They reject it because of that. So what we need to do is to reframe that to the consumer, to something that they can appreciate and understand. So Lego had the same problem. They wanted to move to bioplastics made from cornstarch material. And you can imagine the technical qualities that they would need within their plastic ranges is really difficult. And also the volume of plastic they need is huge. So in order to move that forward, what they very cleverly did was just change all the shrubbery and trees and natural products within their range and change those over to bioplastic, which is actually only 2% of their total volume. And we're able to tell consumers a really wonderful story about how their trees were now made of plant material. And that's something the consumer can engage with and get excited about. We talked about this reframing of behavior. And what's really interesting here is if you sort of change the way you think about different categories, you can come up with new solutions. So if we think of the wine category, when we think about drinking a bottle of wine, what we're thinking about is this wonderful kind of bottle of Bordeaux, glass bottle, middle of the table, some lovely glasses, some nice food, and we're all sitting around there having a social evening, and it's all really beautiful and wonderful. Now, reality is yes, that happens. The other reality is I've been working really late. I want a takeaway pizza and a glass of wine. I've got nothing in, right? Well, Garçon Wine tapped into that with their plastic bottle here. It's thin. It doesn't stand up very well on shelf. I wouldn't want to have that without the lid on. It's easily knocked over. It changes every perception of what a wine bottle should be. But what's fabulous about it from a consumer's perspective is it can be delivered through your letterbox and it won't smash. So you get your wine when you get home and your pizza gets delivered and everyone's happy. So you're appealing to the consumer for a new insight, new behavior. But what do you get from a sustainability point of view, which
Right, good afternoon, everybody. It looks like Nick has lost his internet connection. I think the best thing we can do is, if I could ask Charlotte, who works with me. Charlotte, could you try and contact Nick, please? And we will. I will try and keep talking for the next 2 or 3 minutes, and hopefully we can get Nick back. That's a shame, because what he was saying was absolutely fascinating. So we have an interesting challenge here. But thank you all for your comments and questions so far in the chat. Let's try something while we're waiting for Nick. So one question that came to my mind, and that I would like to speak to Nick about hopefully in the very near future when he comes back online, is whether this type of issue, this question around communicating the benefits to consumers, how early in a process that is considered. Because I think we've seen some examples there whereby there are some very interesting technical innovations, and I think of the Unilever one, for instance. But I wonder how early in the process that was, the story that was going to be told to consumers about what had been done would have been taken into consideration. And I don't know if there is anybody who was involved in that other than Nick in the room. So I don't know. I don't know if anybody has any comments that they'd like to share on that in the chat. I'll put that out there. Hang on, there is. Yes, we've got a question as well about going further with biodegradable polymers, and possibly more questions there about Lego, which is interesting. Okay, a separate question, which perhaps you would be good while we still have a reasonable number of you online, is we would be incredibly grateful if you could leave us some comments in the chat, perhaps about topics that you would like us to cover in future innovation talks. I don't know. We obviously work very hard. We talk to a lot of people to make sure that what we are doing is as relevant as it can be, and is responding to the challenges that you as an industry, as players in the industry might face. But while we're here and we're trying to fix this problem, that would be a really interesting bit of feedback that perhaps you might be able to share with us. So I'll leave that thought with you. So we have a comment from Jane Bear. I know Jane's name, and I don't think I can look up where she's from right now. I know Jane, who is saying plastics should only be replaced if its replacement would lower the carbon footprint. And I think that raises, whenever we talk about sustainability, we talk about the competing challenges of reduction of, let's say, reduction of plastic versus reduction of carbon footprint potentially, or moving to other materials, primarily versus carbon, which benefits itself in many ways through weight, through production processes.
I've done that. I'm there.
Is Nick back? Nick, are you back?
Okay. Fabulous.
That is wonderful. I'm going to hand straight back to Nick. Nick, I'm so pleased to see you.
Yeah, apologies for that. I don't know what happened.
No problem. These things happen. We live and learn. I'm going to put your slide back up, and I'm going to disappear again, Nick. And thank you for staying with us while I've been babbling for the last 5 minutes. Thank you.
Sorry about that, everyone. Yeah, I'll try and speed up so we don't take up too much time here. Apologies. Okay, yeah, so I think we talked about that. So let's move on to the next slide. Another one here is the danger of nature and the wonder of science. There's a real issue out there that we automatically go for something which looks natural because we think that's what the consumer wants. And yes, and now the consumer thinks that's what they want, so we end up giving them something natural. But very often, actually, the solution is something technical. And I put this out really as a challenge to all designers out there to how we deal with this. So if you take Colgate, for example, who've done this wonderful thing in that they've now developed a toothpaste pack which is fully recyclable. So it doesn't have any aluminum in it. It's purely plastic, and it can be recycled. And they've open sourced it, as I understand it. But when you then look at what they've done in terms of how they're communicating it, they put it in a brown cardboard pack, which for me is not really the right solution. This was a technical solution, something really a clever thing that they've done out there, but they've kind of turned it into something natural, which is not really the right story to tell. So my challenge really is out there is to how do we start to talk about science in a positive way? And I do think from what we've seen on COVID that people are starting to trust what the scientists say, not the politicians. So is science now our solution for disease, but also in lots of other things as well? And can we now start to trust it and communicate it as designers? Another bit of very clever tech out there at the moment is DS3, a company which have gone for complete solid products out there, which is really amazing. So you're not shipping liquids all over the world. You're now able to have very lightweight, solid product that you can then use for your personal care and your household care. Now, there's the nub, right? If we're talking about consumers again here and how they perceive this, they'll go, that's a clever bit of tech. But then actually what I'm washing my hands was the same thing that I'm putting into my toilet. Now, we spent years telling them the thing that you put in your toilet is really aggressive, kills on 99.99% of the germs, and everything you put in your hand has got aloe vera and natural things, and that's going to be really soft in your hands. You've already created what we call rivers of thought out there. They're automatic things within people's minds about how something actually works. So you don't have to think about it again. You know, I know this is right, I know this is wrong, and so therefore I can think about today's problems, not these other things. So, and we've embedded that thought in people, and now we're asking people to break that and to think about different things. And so here, one of the challenges this company are going to have is how they do that. How do they get consumers to reperceive these things in a different way, so that when they see this wonderful little cube, this little disc, that they know it's going to be caring for their hands, and when they put it into the toilet, a different one, a different size, maybe a different shape, maybe a different color, maybe a different communication, that they know it's going to kill 100% of all germs. So its efficacy is there. I know there's been quite a lot of talk around Loop within this conference already, and I do want to address it as well, because I think it's a really interesting thing here. You know, as I think people have said before, it's like we're reinventing the milkman here in a way, and we're thinking about durable packaging, bringing product to our door, and that's really exciting. And I think we need to embrace that. And I think what companies like Unilever here with this deodorant products have done is they've created something which is really appealing. It's something that consumer can keep it on their shelf, and it fits with all their other you know, beautiful products like their phone and so forth, and it becomes ownable and it becomes precious. That's a really good way of creating an aesthetic that people buy into. But also within Loop, what you've got is a returnable system where you've got the durable packaging going into the system, and what you'll get from that is products that start to wear. You know, they'll have wear edges on them. If anyone remembers when you used to have returnable glass bottles, they all have a wear edge around them on 2 points, which doesn't look great. We've got used to having things being absolutely pristine. So a challenge for designers now going forward is how do we design things where the wear is embraced? And so having things that last a long time become appealing, become something you enjoy and relish, rather than having something that always looks pristine and new. And then communications, in tone of voice, I think is absolutely critical here. One of the things that we're finding is that the way you talk with consumers, not to them, is really important in getting them to engage with what you're doing. So if you're telling them to start recycling, they won't. They'll say, who are you to tell me to recycle? But if they start to feel that they're part of the process, they're part of the conversation, they feel involved with the brand, I think you get a different response from the consumer. And so this is Ecover, and the way I think they're doing an absolute fabulous job of the way they're talking about their sustainability. You know, some of our caps are a bit rubbish. You know, it's very kind of, you know, self-deprecating, and it sort of lets the consumer in. It lets, you know, it uses humor, it uses sort of easy human language in there to draw people in. And there are lots of different ways of doing this. It doesn't just have to be this way. And we do a lot of work with our clients actually trying to understand through archetypes actually what sort of voice they should have when they're talking to consumers that fits with the consumer in that particular situation around sustainability, but also fits with their brand tone of voice, so that things actually marry up and make sense. And then we have a lot to play with here. We all have all our senses to play with, and we did this through a demonstration of a design we did for a design museum competition on creating a hand sanitizer. And what we realized is that actually going to clean your hands on a hand sanitizer is something you have to proactively do. You know, you have to think, I've got to do this to stay hygienic. And to give you an example of where I think this works is if you take toothpaste. So if we had to clean our teeth in order to keep our teeth going forward in the future, we probably, you know, and not fall out, we probably wouldn't bother. It's too far out into the future. But because they made it minty fresh, and so I can get instantly fresh breath, then I do it every day. That's why I brush my teeth. Not to keep my teeth in the future, it's to have a freshness in my mouth. So we took that same analogy here with this hand sanitizer. So this thing glows, it makes a noise, it changes as you get closer to it in terms of the glowing and the noise, which attracts you to find out what's going on. When you put your hands in there, it changes again. So you're getting a whole sensorial feedback from you. It's beautifully scented, so you're getting kind of your nose is engaged, if you like, within this process, and it makes the whole thing a delight. And you could put that in a restaurant, you could put that outdoors, you could put that anywhere, and I think you get a lot more people sanitizing their hands than you would have done if it didn't have those sensorial engagements. So that's the end of the talk, really. I think what we're saying through is that this is all actually about a win-win-win. If we start with a win for the consumer, build in and bake in a sustainability win, you'll have a win for business, and you'll get growth through sustainability. And that's been borne out through Unilever's efforts with their sustainable living plan. They've seen much bigger growth than the ones that haven't. So we know economically this is the best thing to do. And thank you very much, everyone. That's my little bit about how you get consumer buy-in to sustainable packaging.
Nick, thank you so much. And I think most of all, perhaps, thank you for moving to a different room and giving us a view of two different parts of your house and the street in South London, where I think you are. So
yes.
Thank you for that. We've had a little tour of South London while we're at
charging down the stairs.
Exactly. And thank you all for staying with us during our small technical hiccup there. That sometimes these things are hard to control. So, Nick, thank you so much. It's always a pleasure on a Thursday afternoon to have a little lesson in psychology as well as branding and technology. And I love the rivers of thought idea and all of the concepts that you talked about. So thank you. I'm really interested to know how aware are your customers or the brands or the clients that you work with of this challenge? Because it's one thing to say we've done an amazing technical issue, but an amazing technical innovation or advancement, but how early in the process are people thinking about what the story is that might eventually be told?
I suppose it rather depends on the company, of course, but Obviously what's happening is, as I said before, at a corporate level, these sort of directives are being put down that they have to kind of find solutions. So I think the initial thing then is to go and find that technical solution, do the maths, do the supply chain kind of analysis, etc. And so I think that's the first port of call. And of course, then what happens is you go, okay, right, now we've got to change it over, and someone starts talking about cost, and then the brand teams get involved and they're going, how do we sell this in? And that's the point where they go, right, what do we do now? Because, you know, we can't put 30% on cost to the consumer. This bottle looks grey, it's going to look dirty, you know, all sorts of things suddenly come to the fore. And that's the point where they're going, okay, now how do we sell this in? And so, yeah, and in the same way, in the positive way, they might have a new benefit or a new variant. They're going, right, how do we get the consumer to buy into this? It's a different situation, but it's the same point to the same problem in a way.
Yeah, and what would be the obstacles to making it work, if I could put it that way? Because I was thinking, you know, that there are many stakeholders in a process like this that go beyond the relationship between an agency like yourselves and the marketing teams. There are also potentially, I'm thinking, you know, pressures around what advertising messages might otherwise be being planned by the agency. It's a big thing,
yeah,
to get everybody aligned, I suppose.
It is, and I suppose what we're saying is actually the existing system is very efficiently designed to do what it does. So, you know, you have consumer research to go and look for insights, to find new problems or issues that the consumer has, and then the brand teams then deliver on those to the consumer. So it's all focused around the consumer needs, so new innovations or whatever it might be, or new communications. It's all, there's a big machine that works around that. And what we're saying is actually what you have to do is piggyback on the back of that and apply a whole set of slightly different principles to that, because you're now not just looking at what the consumer needs, you're looking at what society needs or what the planet needs, and you're actually also looking to not just adapt to consumers' behaviour, but also change consumer behaviour. But you can still use the same channels. You need to do it differently, but you can use consumer research, use your observation. Us, as we say, us designers can get involved, and often, more often than not, actually, we're still redesigning the brand, redesigning the packaging, we're redesigning the product, but we're baking in the sustainability aspect, and that's actually the best way. You don't look at it as a separate thing, you look at it in combination. And that's an interesting thing about sustainability generally, I think, is that right now, what people are thinking about is how do we fix what we've got now? But the better way of doing it is actually to think, where do we want to get to in the future? And so actually creating a vision of where your product is going to be in a more sustainable space is actually a slightly different methodology again, from slightly short-term solutions to looking at long-term road.
Interesting. Okay. We had a couple of questions that were asking us to dig into the premise that we sort of started off with, which is around sustainability solutions being more expensive than what is otherwise out there. Could you just give us a couple of examples, perhaps, or sort of dig into that concept a little bit and prove the point? It's something we hear a lot, but where, in reality, where does it happen?
Right. So it happens a lot of places, because of one main thing I think we'll find is the volume is not high enough. So if you're looking at recycled plastic, the volume of recycled plastic is not high enough to get the cost down. You know, if you look at pulp or you look at different things like that, they're industries in their infancy, so they haven't yet got the scale yet to get the price down. I've learned some really interesting things around working on water brands, in that often they can't get enough plastic, so they actually need more people to be recycling their bottles to get more plastic so they can make recycled bottles. And actually, what they're currently doing is they're taking, so if you imagine you're a recycling bottle collector, you're collecting bottles from every different spectrum of the rainbow.
with green bottles, red bottles, blue bottles, white bottles, grey, you know, everything. And so when someone, you know, wants to put their water in a recycled plastic bottle, they're actually getting plastic in a very small portion. And what they have to do is, in order to get a volume of that, they have to start drawing in. So if it's clear, they might draw some blue bottles in there and so on to get the volume. And then you end up with a grey bottle, which doesn't look as good. But if they had more volume, if more people actually recycled and we got that system growing bigger, they could actually be more selective about bottles those days. And actually then we could have clearer back bottles and they would be cheaper. So I think that's the fundamental thing behind it, that we're looking at volume, and we're also looking at a lot of materials in their infancy, and they just haven't got the price down yet.
Okay. Thank you so much. I'm conscious that we're starting to run out of time a little bit. I just want to ask you one question, which is on a slightly different topic, but very relevant to us all. How is life under lockdown for you? Although lockdown is officially finished, how are you in your business in Echo? How have you been managing that, and what are your 2 or 3 big learnings to come out of this for whatever the new normal looks like?
Well, actually, we're thriving. As I say, we had an office in central London. A lot of people don't live in London, so they'd have to come on the trains. So we've been very reluctant to move back into the office, but we found very quickly we had the technology there to all work at home. We were just saying it earlier before we started the talk, that we're finding meetings start bang on time. You know, it used to be meetings would start 5, 10, 15, 20 minutes late every day, you know, and there's a knock-on effect. Meetings start within minutes, or if not on the minute. So we're far more efficient. I think as designers, the designers really enjoy the quiet time to get down and really think hard about things without the distractions around them. They've enjoyed that. The struggle is on the innovation and the brainstorming side. And that's a much harder place to be. And we've been experimenting with technology, but there's nothing quite like getting a lot of people into a room and trying to crack an idea out. And looking at a wall of faces is never quite the same. But we're doing pretty well out here, actually. It's not too bad. And I think also my team and ourselves have all really enjoyed not having to have the commute, which is great. So everyone's been getting fitter and learning hobbies, doing all sorts of new things. Or, unfortunately, the son working with Colgate.
There is that too. Yeah, there is that too. Fabulous. Well, listen, Nick, thank you so much for your insights today. I'm sure that everybody on the call, wherever they are in the world, will have lots to take away from that. So a huge thank you on behalf of all of us, and to all of you, thank you very much for joining us today. If you want to get hold of the slides, I would encourage you to contact Nick directly. That puts you in touch, and that's sort of what we're here for, to connect people across industries, however it is that we do it. We are working on our future innovation talks. I think we're going to be taking a break over August, and we will be back in September. In the meantime, we will be, of course, whether it's ADF and PCD and PLD that I work on, particularly here in Paris, or whether it is the packaging innovations and MPAC and luxury packaging team in London, we will keep putting out there all of our daily social media posts across Instagram, LinkedIn, Facebook, Twitter, to keep giving you all little nuggets of interest and inspiration and excitement and innovation, and all that good stuff that we like to do on a daily basis. In the meantime, all of you, keep innovating, keep working hard. I hope you have a summer holiday coming up, because God knows we all deserve it. And have a fabulous summer, stay safe, and we'll see you in September. Thank you all very much, and have a wonderful afternoon. Thank you.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Thank you, Nick.